Inflammation in the brain can cause brain fog and even diminishment in memory from fogging the brain enough to where you don't have the original acquisition of information to remember. And so therefore it's almost impossible to recall. So what causes inflammation in the brain? Primarily infections, toxins, or head injury. And so it's really important to see someone who can diagnose which of those three things is going on and knows how to treat them in an effective way. So, infections that can affect the brain would be reactivation of herpes family viruses. Those are viruses known to live in the nervous system. So you've got Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, HHV6. You have some chronic bacterial infections such as tick-borne pathogens with Borrelia, Bartonella. There's other chronic bacterial infections, Mycoplasma, chlamydia, and some parasitic infections like Babesia. They can cause infections actually in the brain and nervous system. And then there's infections outside of the brain, but it still creates inflammation in the brain. So you can have gut dysbiosis. So if your gut is really inflamed, there is this kind of gut-brain connection and even transfer of molecules up the vagus nerve into the brain from an inflamed gut. And the immune system of the brain speaks the same language as the immune system surrounding the gut. So an inflamed gut can lead to an inflamed brain. And then you have toxins. So infections I just mentioned all generate a lot of toxins, but you can have toxins that are non-infectious. So you can have heavy metals, pesticides, industrial toxicants of other varieties that can create inflammation in the brain. Most toxins we come in contact with, whether they're biotoxins from infections or otherwise, are fat-soluble. And so one of the larger fat reservoirs in the body are the neuron membranes in the brain. And just like you have an immune system that surrounds the gut, like I said, you have an immune system that surrounds the brain. So if you're collecting toxins in the neurons of the brain, it's going to activate an immune response in the immune cells surrounding the neurons. And the immune cells will release inflammatory products that will generate an inflammatory response in the brain that leads to a feeling of brain fog and reduced memory. So head injury is an interesting one as well, because you can have a head injury and that can cause the release of glutamate in the brain that can then generate inflammation over time. So you've got to figure out what's causing the inflammation, and then you got to figure out what to do about it. So you ideally would want to treat those infections. If you have an infection, you'd want to pull toxins out of the brain with like either phospholipid IV therapy, where we use progressive doses of phosphatidylcholine to sweep toxins out of the membranes, followed by glutathione, a methylating agent to mop those toxins up, or we use EBO2, where we're putting a catheter in both arms, running the blood through a dialysis filter, and then ozonating it, exposing it to light wavelengths, and putting it back in the other arm. This not only treats pathogens, but it begins to pull toxins and inflammatory products out of the body, including the brain. Head injury is a different animal. You need to really diagnose it properly, and then you need to kind of treat inflammation differently than you treat low voltage aspects of head injury. That's why we have 19-channel EEG brain mapping here in a full neuroscience department at Jyzen, because you really need to know what you're treating, and then you need to treat it properly. But it can be treated. So regardless of whether this starts with infection, toxin, or head injury, there are ways to treat it to reduce that brain fog and to get your memory back.